Thank you very much. That's my daddy on the front cover. I told him a dirty joke, and that's why he laughed. Okay, so I absolutely believe that age is an attitude, and it's because of this beautiful man who's 94 now, nearly 94, who inspired me to think that age is in fact an attitude. And I think from a paper I wrote 20 years ago, it was on my computer. That's why I'm able to say to you, what are the dates? I've got all this amazing information that I wrote for my students at university because I was teaching special populations, ageing, children and exercise, etc. And I wrote them a book on ageing, and it was about a 16 to 20 page book. And I thought, well, I've got all this information that Professor John Ward did and other people did on the physical aspects of ageing, where they found that 7% they thought would be a great percentage of people getting really good muscle tone and physiological results in their heart, etc. And they only got 7%. But he said the thing that changed was their attitude. And that's what stirred me on to think about age being an attitude. And Professor John Ward left the Prince of Wales Hospital and still works now in ageing. But 48% of people that entered that program changed their attitude, became from depressed people to non-depressed people because of physical exercise. And we've been hearing about that all morning, have we not? Yeah, so I could get off the stage now because all the speakers this morning basically told you what I was going to tell you. Well, maybe not. So let's have a look. There was this little boy many years ago, who grew up in Winterton, England, and he came up in just the awful situation. His mother had 4 other children, and his father died when he was 2, and she couldn't cope. So she handed him over to the grandmother and said, well, you're going to have to raise him because there's no social security. I can't do it. So as soon as this little boy could walk or ride a bike, he went down to the newsagents and he realised he was going to have to help with this family, the finance. And so they gave him a bike if he delivered papers. So he delivered papers before school. He delivered Beatrix patterns. Is anyone old enough to remember Beatrix patterns? Oh, thank you. I'm another 1950. And Beatrix patterns at lunchtime, school lunchtime, and then after school he delivered papers again. And so that was his life, and it was hard. He won't tell you that, though. He'll just say he was a paper boy, and it's not until you get into a close situation that sometimes he'll say, it was so cold. Like England? Give me a break. So it was, ice coming off his gloves and his hat, etc. Anyway, he went through life, he went through school, etc., and he delivered his papers. He asked if he could have Saturday off to play soccer. So he learned to play soccer. And as he was riding his bike one day, he saw people learning to dance. And he asked if he could have Wednesday afternoons off or Wednesday evenings off. And he wouldn't tell anybody what he was doing because he was embarrassed for a boy learning to dance. And he went and learnt to dance and on a Wednesday night. And on Sundays he worked because they got paid. He had a beautiful voice and he got paid to sing in the church choir. So wherever he could make money for his grandmother, of course. And he formed this amazing relationship. But it was really hard times. For lunch he would quite often take what was left over from dinner. It was the rice that they had, the rice pudding. It had gone hard, so that became the lunch the next day. And there were some really, really hard times. He collected coal. He had to go and buy coal for a penny and what have you and bring it back on the back of his bike, etc., etc. So as he grew up and as he went to school, he won an award. And the award was that he could actually go on to a famous school like Harvard. And his mother said, you can't go. And he was horrified. How can I not go to somewhere like that? It's like such an amazing thing, the best thing that's ever happened to my life. And she said, I can't afford the books or the uniform. And, so he ran away, as you do. You think, well, stuff this, I'm going. So he ran away, and he suddenly realised that in his running away, he said it must have been so much harder for her to tell me that than it is for me to accept it. And he came home and it changed his life. That decision that he made right then and there changed his whole world. He went to school and all the kids that were having trouble at school, he was starting to help them get through the subjects. And he became a brilliant communicator. When he left school, his brother joined the Marines because they were calling people up. And he knew if he was called up, he'd go into the army. And he said, no, wait, Joe, I'm going to go with my brother. But his brother was a foot taller. And so he missed out on getting into the Marines, so he got into the Navy. And so he became, being that communicator, they saw in him straight away that essence of communication. So they put him in charge of Morse code. And it wasn't too long before he realised that the Japanese used a whole different Morse code to anyone else. And so he studied that Morse code. And he brought it back, and now all the other navies are now wanting him, right? And so the Australian Navy sort of doubled his wage. And of course, in those days, it was all about working hard and getting money, right? That's all he'd ever known. That's what he'd inherited. That essence of, I've got to work hard and it's about the money. So he joined the Australian Navy and got onto the ship called the Geraldton, and he was in those boats that go around the big ships and keep them safe. So the fact that he's alive is just amazing. If you ask him about stories about the war, he won't tell you. He'll just tell you the funny bits about when they were caught in the nutty, the nude, all swimming on a beach, and then the ship had to go and they all had to come back without any clothes on. And he'll just tell you those sorts of stories of when he was literally caught out, or unless you get him quietly, and again you can get some of those other stories. But the essence of what happened was he came back to Australia. Australia didn't know what to do with him because he's English. So he said, what are you going to do with me? And they said, well, you better go to Sydney. He was in Perth, the other side of the planet. Well, Australia anyway. So they put him on a cattle train and he goes across to Sydney, and Sydney says, well, we don't know what to do with you. You better go to Canberra, the capital of Australia. And by the way, there's 700 women down there. He said, put me on the next train. So he goes down there, meets his wife, and falls madly in love and stays in Australia. And he changed his whole attitude from that one decision, made such a big change in his life that from then on, everything in his world was about possibilities. That he could stay, he had 7 children, all those children have had children, etc., etc. So my story is that man is my dad. Some of you met him in Albuquerque. When he was 90, I decided to bring him around the world. And I said to him, I'm going to quite a few places. You may as well come because you can tick off all those things on your bucket list. And one of the things was a hot air balloon. And I said to Viki before I left Australia, I'll be winning that because she was offering a free hot air balloon trip. And we won it. And the only thing wrong was when we went to go and have the hot air balloon ride, it didn't go on that day. That was the only day it didn't go because it was too windy. So my friend Anne, who'd accommodated us for 10 days while we were at the book awards and doing things in Albuquerque, I handed it to her and I said, enjoy the flight. And my dad's never forgotten that trip. I mean, we were on TV in Denver and we flew to London and I took him off to see his sister in the middle of London there while I did some speaking and what have you. Went over to Ireland, the whole thing that you do as a speaker. And my dad, he's running from one train to another. And he's 90, but he's just that essence of life. And that's what made me think about this book. And you think about, the way I've written the book is, why do we age? And the theories around ageing is, if you go back into years ago, is around Hayflick theory or the cellular theory, that your cells just don't duplicate properly. And I don't know if you've ever had a live blood cell test. Anyone? I get them frequently. And it tells you so much information about your cells. My naturopath will say, what are you doing with your bees? And I'm looking all over going, well, I don't know. Where have they gone? So all my life I've had a problem with vitamin B. Well, guess what? The latest research from Dr. Eamon Kapora and Dr. Mario Martinez, and that's in the book, is that 80% of the population don't digest vitamin B. That's worth knowing, isn't it? Isn't vitamin B the essence of your nerve cells? Yeah, and if we can think we're eating it, and we can think we're digesting it, and we can take all the nutritionals, but if your system doesn't absorb it, then you have an issue with vitamin B, and of course then that leads on to other things. And I'll tell you what, it looks really weird. If you look at a cell, it's incomplete. It's an incomplete circle. And just remember, every cell duplicates. So those cells are duplicating as an incomplete circle. Yeah, so every cell then is a vitamin B deficiency. The other thing that came out of their research as to why we age was culture. Dr. Mario Martinez, there's a lot of work in all the blue zones that was mentioned earlier today. Buettner did work in the blue zones. Dr. Mario Martinez went to 4 different areas, and he actually interviewed the people who were over 100 and said, what is it? What is it about why you're over 100 and you're well? And one of the things he brought up was culture. And so with Dr. Mario Martinez's work and Dr. Eamon Kapoor's work, where she looked at epigenetics, the way we digest food, etc., he looked at that the genetics that comes into your system is only 20%. So we can't blame mum and dad anymore. Dang. We've been getting away with it for years, haven't we? Oh, yeah, mum's got that or dad's got that, you know. I remember having a knee operation once because I tripped in a venue like this, and anyway, it is what it is. And so I needed this knee surgery, and the guy said, I don't know if I need it. I think I might just get better with my own attitude. And he said, well, why do you say that? And I said, well, a lot of people actually don't get better after knee surgery, I've noticed. And he said, oh, they're the people with arthritis. He said, you don't have any. I said, I'm glad I came to you. That's all I needed to hear. Because my mother was riddled with it. Does that make sense? So that gene stopped because of what I did around learning about health and nutrition all my life and doing something about it. I cured myself of lupus, so I certainly know what it's like to be at the bottom of a shower screen and dying and not being able to get up, and now being so, well, I'm dangerous. Well, you know. It's always questionable, isn't it? So why do we age? You've got the Hayflick theory, the cellular theory, you've got all those theories, but this new theory around culture is very, very interesting, because what the culture does, it can give you all their stuff. So in fact, the genetics can be in the culture, in the way you do your entertainment, in the way you work in your 80%, can also have a genetic predisposition. Does that make sense? So you may follow or copy in your time out what your parents did, even though it's not just genetics of what you inherited. And what he found was, for example, in Peru, the women, when they're going through menopause, are treated so badly. And so depression in Peru after menopause is huge because of the way women are treated, because it's a habit. We learned about habits, of course, today. A culture is a habit. Think about it. A culture is a bunch of habits stuck together, and people believe in it to the point where they'll die for it. So what habit are we in? And that's what he was saying. This Peru culture talks about menopause as being basically a disgrace. And so these women are having really bad immune problems and autoimmune issues, etc. Whereas in Japan, it's considered the second spring. Bring it on, I say. Yeah? So that was very interesting about one of the whys of why we age. The next thing was about what is aging. And of course, aging to me, it's about stress. It's about de-stressing the system. What is aging to me is inflammation. Inflammation is the basis of all disease. But inflammation isn't always bad. To get inflammation and be rushed to a doctor to get an anti-inflammatory is sometimes the worst thing you can do. So when I had lupus, you couldn't have touched me. I was huge out here. My gut was so inflamed. And you know, when I teach NLP, I know that that's fear now, because all the different areas of the body have an emotional connection. So people that have a lot of problems around their neck and shoulders, etc., tend to have some anger issues. And people who have issues across the breast with heart attacks and breast cancer and a lot of those, quite often when I'm clearing them, they have a lot of grief issues or sadness. And once I do their emotional clearing, those areas heal. It's profound. But my issue, 97% of diseases stem from the bowel. Go figure. What a fearful society we are. And I was included. How many times were you told as a kid you don't measure up, or, get on with it? Or I was told I was cheeky all the time. You can't imagine that, can you? But I took it. It depends on how we take it. So my coach, Pip, she came last year. She actually thought that being cheeky was fun. I didn't. I interpreted it as people didn't. I didn't measure up. I'm not good enough. And so I started working just like my dad, 4 jobs, doing everything, and I was proving myself. And even though I was very efficient and did some amazing stuff, won some awards all around the world, etc., it was because I was pushing myself to get some sort of recognition for who I was. Who's been there? Be honest, be truthful. Yeah. And so that's where the inflammation, this is the fear area that we're fighting against. So things like irritable bowel. There's an interesting story. I walked into a hotel and the guy doesn't know me. I'm in the middle of Holland somewhere. And I said to this guy, he just walked towards me and I said, "So what are you so afraid of?" "Excuse me?" I said, "What are you so afraid of?" Because he had this huge gut. And he said, "Well, my girlfriend's having an affair." And I said, "Oh, how's your affair going?" We've never met. He's going, but he just starts answering my questions. He said, "You're good." I said, "Do you want to chat?" I said, "Because I just feel like I'm sent here to help you. And I'd love to help you if I can. Do you know, he was raised in Afghanistan. He had a gun put in his hand when he was 4. Who should he trust? Like no one? Do you know what his goal was? We talked about goals this morning. Do you know what his goal was? To make sure everybody in the third world has a house. And he was sending fabrications and he was raising enough money through what he did to send materials and that to countries, and he was working out a way for the Holland government to help pay for it. Whoops. Delete. So that he could get those materials to those countries. And I said, "Well, I'm involved in an estate in Australia that wants to do things about recycling and etc." And he said, "That's exactly what I'm talking about." So very, very interesting. Can you see how first impressions are very, very interesting, and how we can hold anything we have in our system, and once we clear that, we can have the most amazing life. Our attitude just changes like that. So how do we get better? How do we age successfully? If you look at what we learnt this morning, of course we're going to talk about nutrition. Yeah, I've been supplementing for 5,000 years, even though I'm only 5,001. And I think supplementation today is a given, because what I learned about what's not in there, we were raised on a farm, and yet we all got sick. I got lupus, my sister got what they think was lupus, my other sister got epilepsy. She's been living with me now for 8 years, and she no longer has epilepsy tablets. Because you can do everything with attitude. You can do everything by changing your attitude, by changing your state. It's all about the power of thought. So changing your mind can allow you to age beautifully, whichever way you want to age. Does that make sense? So how we can age, it's a changing of thought, training your brain to think positively, training your brain to think about what you can do. That's why I call it, how can I make it happen now? That's the only way I think. Because if you've got this much energy and you're thinking about why you can't do something, you're taking this much energy. And all of a sudden, you've only got this much energy in order to move forward. That's why I can ring Viki and say, "Hey, that book's underway. What time do you want it?" I haven't just started it, Viki. I've literally been writing it since April. I normally start about April. And so all the research comes in. I talk to all the people. I listen to all the DVDs. I'm on a TV show every Wednesday called livingconsciously.tv. And Dr. Mario Martinez came on the TV, and I went, this is just the universe sending me all this latest stuff. And then I met Dr. Eamon Kapoor here at the Book Awards last year and asked her if I could have some of her details. And of course, I'd made up my mind. I'd set a goal to write Age is an attitude. And so all these people, the universe just sends them to you. It's too easy. All you've got to do is put it together. So then the way I... Corrine. So the way I put it together, I have a format. How do I put it together? I use the NLP, the way you learn. So I start with the why. I then go into the what. I then go into the how. I then go into the what if. Because all of you learn in one of those ways. And so if I design my books in that way, it's going to suit everyone. Too easy. So when I've done the what, stress is a big part of that, etc., and we talked about inflammation, then we talk about the how. So you've got to be able to demonstrate how can your material help the audience out there. So how can my material help people age beautifully? Because I'm going to give you all the information from these people who researched the centenarians. Right? They went in and they spoke to the centenarians. And what did they say? They said, if we're productive every day, it makes a huge difference. Now, they could be 500 years old, but the thing is, when they get out of bed of a morning, they say, I'm going to go and look after that great-great-great-great-grandchild, but I'm going to do it on purpose. I'm going to have a purpose about what I do. Does that make sense? You could be having a day off, but you're on purpose to have a really good day off. You've left the phone at home, and you're on purpose to rejuvenate you. I'm one of those people that makes their bed first thing in the morning. I'm one of those people that get up. I've got a dog lead in my hand within 5 metres of my bed, and my dog takes me for a walk every single day, and a power walk. He just has to try and keep up. And we walk, and every 3 hours I walk. It gets me off the computer, and it gets my head, and I can do gratitude prayers while I'm walking. Yeah? I do aqua fitness twice a week. And I power. I go into the back of the class because I used to be a trainer. I used to train the trainers in aqua fitness. Water fit, water exercise, what else do you call it? We call it aqua fitness. And I work really hard up in the corner because there are a lot of older people. I'm in that age group where you could retire. So one of the things the centenarians said was they don't believe in retirement. See, retirement is to retire means to continually get tired. Yeah? So retirement could be changed to productive older years. I've never been so busy. Yeah? It's really, really a different way to think. My dad couldn't wait to retire. At 60, he retired. Got in a caravan and took his genie around Australia and, did all that stuff, and they loved it. I don't want to do that. I actually said to my husband, you go and do that, but I can't come with you. I've got a purpose and I haven't finished it yet. And I need to keep writing. And when I realised that purpose, that essence of getting up, I thought I've got to keep writing and sharing my knowledge, because one of my greatest goals is to leave a legacy. And if your goal is to leave a legacy, then why aren't you writing? It's not a case of your ego stopping you from writing a book. It's a case of focusing on the legacy you're going to leave from the information. So that's one of the hows. All of these people had a sense of community. They had a sense of fun. They got on their bikes and rode to work. One of the 97-year-olds still does 25 heart surgeries a month. One lady in the front row of my book launch in Sydney said, not on me, he doesn't. I said, listen, honey, if he's had 95 years experience, he'd be working on me. What is it about us thinking that older people, it's that attitude of, older people, when we get up, when we're born, we teach kids to walk and talk, and then we can't wait to put them into a retirement village or a nursing home. It's really quite sacrilege. My father's only just gone in there because he wanted to have friends his age. He was living with me, and I think I wore him out. But anyway, so we had great nutrition. I set up a garden for him. I met a doctor who was doing the same thing with her father. He had a to-do list every day. He was on purpose, doesn't matter what he was doing in that day. Does that make sense? You're getting the picture? So these were the things the centenarians said to them. They ate mostly vegetables, which I live on, I just love, in their diet. And the meat they ate was grass-fed meat only. They ate a lot of tofu. They celebrated, which was a point brought up this morning as well. They celebrated life. They celebrated time. It was really important for them to do that. And some of the most amazing sayings, one of the most amazing sayings my dad has is, my heart, I may be young at heart, it's just the other bits that are getting older. One lady at the retirement village, I worked in a retirement village just to get some of this research. One lady said to me, she said, we can't die, they keep replacing bits. So what I wanted to bring to you today was some of the research that's come out. Basically all boils back to you training your brain. People are training their brain now to get rid of pain. People are training their brain. I trained my brain to get over a major disease I was dying from. I trained my brain to think differently and to do something entirely different, and I've never, ever looked back. It's just been amazing. And I believe that we can train our brain to do anything. A guy trained his brain in Melbourne, Australia, to walk properly with Parkinson's disease. There's lots and lots of research now. There's an epigenetic centre in Melbourne now. There's centres coming up all over the place. Some of this research is just so empowering, and it's in the book. So, and there's some funny things, and there's some great stuff for you to read. And there's also some stories, because I think a book's really, the stories about people and the way they live is really important. The last chapter of the book is all sayings that the centenarians somewhere in the world have said. And some of them are very, very funny. One guy said, Amit Ray said, it doesn't matter how much money you earn, it doesn't matter what you own, it doesn't matter what you do. What matters is, what energy have you given back to the world? What energy have you portrayed out? That saying, the sayings all through the book. They're beautiful sayings because these people have this attitude that when these people actually pass on, they pass on with a smile on their face. It's like, I'm going to go in sideways and say thanks for the ride. Or I'm just going to die in my sleep. But I've lived. And can I just share that one of the ways I did that was I set out 3 chairs. And in this chair I wrote, where am I now? And in this chair I wrote, where do I want to be? And I realised that I've got to write the books and live that legacy. And in this chair I wrote, who do I have to become to do that? I have to pull my finger out. No, you don't understand that. I have to get on with it. Does that make sense? Yeah? So that's why I've started writing a book a year. It's like, get on with it. Because now, for the first time in my life, I'm not afraid of dying at all. My physical body will live on, and I will do whatever I can, because what I've done is leave a legacy. I've left 10 books, I've left videos, I've left material on my website, I've left heaps of material and heaps of stuff that people can share after my physical body's gone. So thank you very much for being a great audience. Have you got any questions for me? All the what if people all have their hands up. Yes.
I have memory issues. I had an accident in 83, so my whole past is almost kind of blank.
Yep.
Moments, and I'm jealous of people who remember details like what happened on days.
It can be a good thing to not have to not have a good memory. Your brain actually has a filing cabinet, and you can train your eyes to go to the filing cabinet areas, and you can actually pick up anything you want. I can tell whether you're right or left-handed from looking at your eyes. So I do this on even Skype. But so I teach people if they think they have a bad memory and you're right-handed, look up to the left. And just see what you can recall, because you'd be surprised. So I can go anywhere and do a talk, because all my talks are up in the filing cabinet. Yeah? And yes, I do have PowerPoints. I chose not to use them. Does that make sense? Or if I want to remember what that feeling was like, I can go down to my right. If I want to do my tax, I go down to my left. So your brain is sorted out in filing cabinet, and by looking up and teaching people, and when I teach kids especially, I say, you're the only child that knows this. So they go back to school thinking. And you can teach kids to spell, dyslexia. You can turn all the words around backwards and kids will remember it like that. So it's amazing memory. We've got a great memory, and from now on you can have a great memory, and keep training your eye to go up and access it. Thanks for the question. It's great. My dad keeps saying he has a bad memory, and I said, then you will continue to have one. But if you can think that you have a great... Because every time he remembers something now, I go, great memory. Great memory. By saying great, you're pleasing the subconscious mind. It's the child part of you, right? The 96%. It likes to know that you're doing something great. So great memory. So thank you for allowing me to be here and share this information.
I have a quick question.
Yes?
And a request.
Yes.
Okay, so my question would be to you. What is the best advice you would give to an aspiring author or entrepreneur? And the second piece is that what message would you like to think that your older self is trying to bring to you at this time?
My older self or yours?
Yours.
Oh, my older self? It can't keep up with me. The first question for the inspiring of writing your book is about what do you value? Values are going to drive your behaviour. So I value family, obviously. I adore my dad. It's huge for me to have my dad over on a weekend. We make a fuss over him and cook lunch, and he brings a friend from the village, etc. And my sister lives with me, and we've already organised all these gatherings. And when she sings and I've finished my training, I go and I'm at all her gigs. When my son sings, I'm at all his gigs. So family is really important. The essence of what you would do would be to, if you can't design, like what was stopping me at the beginning was the heading. Well, what am I going to call it? And then I met with another guy and he said, oh, that's easy, Lynda. Your saying is, how can I make it happen? Why don't you call your books that? And that was it. That's all I needed. So go and talk to someone else and say, if I was to write a book and you know me with all the different things I've done through my life, what would you call it? You know, this is what I would like to offer. What would you call it? Ask somebody else. Don't get stuck on one thing. But designing your books in the why, the what, the how, and the what if will allow every reader to get at least 3 chapters or whatever that's going to really suit them, because that's the way people learn. So that's helped me plan all my slides, all my trainings, all planned that way. Everything I do is planned that way. If I'm going to do a press release, anything, it's planned that way. Why? What's my why? What exactly do I want to offer? Those people need more information and more research. How can I do it? Those people need demonstration. How are we going to get through this aging process? How are we going to do that? How can I demonstrate this? I've got pictures of the Gestalt and pictures of your mind in the book so you can actually see how that you can change your mind and go back through time. And then what if? What if I could just change my mind and I could age well? Because I'll tell you something. If you've got the neural networks in your system to have a disease, then you have the same neural networks to get well. It's the same neural network. Great question. Thank you.
Well, Lynda has been so kind and so gracious that you can see she's just a dynamic coach and trainer and speaker, and she's actually giving away 6 sessions with her. So, okay, so dig in the bag, and everyone has to be here to win, so there's several of them. Oh, AJ, he's not here, is he? Okay. Laura Sturge? No? Patricia LeBlanc. She was here a minute ago. Okay. Olivia DeMoss. Rita. Okay. Jazz. How about that?
So we've got the front row covered.
Okay, so let me see. How many do we have so far? We have 3. 3 more.
I think there's
Lynda. Valente. Okay. Kathy Connor? Not here. Okay. Jean Russo. And I think she's not here, right? Corrine Walford? All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 more. Yeah. Yeah. You sure? Okay. I'm going to put her back in here for something else. Okay. By the way, she's not rejecting Lynda. She's Lynda's editor and good friend, and they're together a lot. Okay, Beth Kalachi. All right. Okay. So, just make sure I got. Okay, so here are the certificates, Lynda, and we can probably get someone to help you with that. And I want to thank you so much for coming all the way from Australia and bringing all of your wisdom.